expect that this is going to be a good one. Not to say that I don't think that our streams are ordinarily fantastic, but I have a lot of streams where I'm just kind of rambling and, not getting to the point. Anyway, but I digress. I think that today's conversation is going to be quite lively. I love this cat so much, but I'm pretty sure that she does this on purpose. I'm pretty sure. And we're going to try something today. We have some sun coming in. Ordinarily, I try to block the whole everything. But here, let me show you all. I've got some tomatoes that are growing here. And I'm trying to grow some tomatoes indoors. I have extra trellis around them because the cats won't stop chewing the leaves. Good. Thank you, Street Cat Love, for putting something over on YouTube so I could see that that was working too, because I forgot to double check that before the stream started. Speaking of things that I'm supposed to double check before. Oh no! That's, hate to tell you what to do. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but yeah, that's cool. That the Anarch's doing a live stream. That's good to know. There was one that there's actually quite a few of his videos I've been taking a look at that I'm gonna want to check out. One of the things that I'm really interested in that he has is his response to anarcho-capitalism. I've brought this up a few times. I think that my analysis of anarcho-capitalism is a little bit too reductive. I don't know that there's much need for more nuance, but I haven't dedicated any amount of time or energy or effort or thought about entertaining the ideas beyond clearly they're antithetical to actual anarchism, right? But there is some nuance to be had there from what I understand, and I would be interested to get Anarch's perspective on that in particular. And there's a few other things. Tenekoe, welcome in. It's great to see you, Kimatara. Hope you're having a good day. Let's see. We are. Oh, right. So we have a plan today. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. I don't have the thing ready to pull up. Probably. Well, okay. So here's where we'll start is by me saying, first off, we are going to spend some time talking about Dr. Fatima's recent video, Should Scientists and Engineers Run Society? Then we are going to spend a little bit of time talking about Andrewism's most recent video, How to Build Radical Community. But I'm probably, in each of these, I'll probably just play the section. So this is, I want to say it was 22 or 20, yeah, 25. So that's going to be 7 or 8 minutes, and this is probably going to be also, I'm guessing, maybe even less than that. Yeah, that looks like it's maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And these two ideas are going to do a good job, I think, of bookend is not the right word, but to begin the boundaries, right? To start with some structure, right? To give us some structural outlines That's what it is that I'm trying to say. That's not really the right word either, because they're not juxtaposing. They're anyway. It doesn't anyway. They'll do a good job of setting it up. Okay, excellent. That's cool, Jane. Let me know how it goes. You can always watch the VOD, and we'll continue this conversation later anyway. So it's great to see you, Jane. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Cool. We'll yeah, so we'll do those, and these videos are in reference to the topic that we started to dive into on last stream. And I keep trying to figure out how to get to this. Because I forgot. It's just the problem is that I'm very easily distracted. And it right now my cat really is trying really hard to distract me. Clearly it's been far too long since I've pet them, so I'm pretty sure they're going to end up in my lap at some point during the stream. We'll see. she's pretty picky and really quite weird about affection. We'll see. Anyways, so this is the general overview that I've started. So I mentioned that there are other overarching themes aside from the stuff that's here in the outline, but I wanted to cover this stuff first before we began to expand out. And I think that there's a few questions that I would like to have answers to, and whether or not those answers are set in stone or founded on something concrete, I don't think is really important for me at this juncture. But I want to explore these ideas. I want to ask some questions and then answer those questions, or have some kind of answer for those questions. Even if they're not entirely satisfying, if we can get past this point, then there are other broader themes that are associated with this that I'll incorporate into the outline, and then we'll expand out, and then we'll have a much larger conversation about what it is that I think that we should be doing. And right, and herein is part of the difficulty, right? When I say the words, the things that we should be doing, right? I am not just making utterances into the marketplace of ideas about abstract concepts. I'm telling you what to do, right? And the idea that I'm trying to get at is I would like for us to have some kind of way that we can work together to have some kinds of answers that work for us to be able to integrate those into a network of understanding that allows us to move on with certain kinds of topics and ideas with regard to our own organizing, in the effort to reach a telos in which we are the kind of people who are going out into the world or in other places here on the internet, and we are telling people what to do. And to clarify, I don't think that we are going to give ourselves some kind of power or appoint ourselves in some kind of way that we get to be the bosses of other people, that we can tell them what to do. The idea is that we have we have found truths which are themselves sublime. So I won't be telling you all anything. We'll arrive at some kind of idea. And that idea will be something that we can take to other places, and that idea will have its own sublime character, right? That compels those other people that, holy heck, that's what we should be doing too, right? That's what I'm trying to get to. Welcome in, Apolitical Daddy. I'm sorry I didn't say hi to you the second you came in. Good to see you. I hope you're having a good day. Hard topics, so don't get most of it. I did a presentation to my advocating for socialist ideas today, so to my classmates. Oh, that's fantastic. If you would like, feel free to share that, Apolitical Daddy, in the Discord. I'm interested. I'd take a look at that to see what your presentation had to say. And if you're not comfortable doing that, I completely understand. But I'm interested, and if you're interested, especially if you're interested in getting some feedback, I'd love to take a look at it. And that's something that I would like to make blanketly extended to all of my viewers. If you are a student and you are working on something for one of your classes, it is not inappropriate for you to seek counsel on how to do that assignment. That's not cheating, right? If I'm looking at your assignment and I give you the answers, then we are now cheating, right? But if you come to me for counsel on how to proceed on an assignment, or help on how to figure out what the instructor is looking for, or if you've got questions about MLA or APA formatting, or if you just want some feedback on creative writing, those are things that I can do. I saw a thought-provoking post regarding perfectionism a couple days ago. Aesthetic communism will fail to adequately correct its mistakes, preferring to preserve the brand's appearance of perfection. This is why so many orgs on offer refuse to deal with sex pests, or perhaps they refuse to handle the settler colonial contradictions to an adequate place, or worse, they refuse to engage in the necessary infrastructure building for revolution. That's absolutely on point. Thank you, Street Cat Love, for sharing, because that's, I think that's part of what I want to talk about today, right? So, and I've mentioned this before, that I really don't like optics conversations. And I don't like them because optics shouldn't matter. We should be about the principle. We should be about the direct action. And if we are helping people and liberating people and undermining systems of authority and undermining systems of the state and undermining capitalism, then it doesn't matter what our optics are. Right? If we're doing the right things, optics don't matter. Except that is not a true statement. They actually absolutely do. Optics absolutely do matter, because we are in, and I hate to say the words that are going to come out of my mouth, but it's also true. We are embroiled in a conflict about truth and liberty and justice, and that conflict is recruiting agents who will execute and recreate certain kinds of systems on purpose, right? And the right, the alt-right are recruiting heavily, and they are being very successful because they are using propaganda and they are concerned with optics. And for us to ignore that material reality is foolish, right? I don't like having optics conversations because they shouldn't matter. But unfortunately, to ignore them is to ignore material conditions. I'm not saying that we should be focused on optics. I don't want to do that at all. And I think that most people on the left really don't, except for people who are already extremely performative. Like Mike from PA, I think is a great example. If that's what you're interested in, go follow Mike from PA. Right? If you just want to feel good about yourself by sitting around with a bunch of people who are like-minded, who are just telling each other what a good job they are for having the right ideas, go follow Mike from PA. That's what you'll be doing. And maybe messaging. I think optics matter. No, absolutely. That's my point. I think that optics do. I don't think that they should be our focus, but I think that they should matter. That's what and this has to do with the branding or rebranding of communism or leftism or any of these ideas that we're on about, and that's kind of what's going on here too. So let me go ahead and add something to this while I'm in mid-thought before I forget about it. I'm gonna add something to this, and then we're gonna get to the videos, and then we'll start unpacking some of the ideas. What I want to add to this is we'll just start with this for now. And just how did I? Yeah, I might draw attention to that again later. Okay, so that's just so there's another arching theme. Oh, why does it say welcome to the chat room? My connection's good. 0 drop frame rates. Am I not? Uh-oh. Did I F? Am I still here? This says I'm still live. Has my runtime at 31 minutes. Okay. Let me double check my OBS. Okay. That was weird. My run for a minute in OBS, but it said that my runtime was 0, and I was like, wait, wait a minute. Right. So, right. The note that I'm adding, good, because I haven't asked. That's what I was worried about. The note that I was adding, has to do with yeah, it's up there above there. Street Cat Loves comment, right? This idea of rebranding. So there is This has to do with the Hannah Arendt work that I'm trying to get through, that I'm trying to read, that I haven't been able to read in 3 or 4 weeks. That's the last time I talked to you all about reading it. I haven't had a chance to read it. But there's a loss of authority. That's kind of what the book is about. Between Past and Future is Arendt examining authority in various kinds of concepts, in the ways that certain truths or ideas have held sway over how we structure our whole lives and societies, and how we have reached a point, and keep in mind, Hannah Arendt that was writing a long time ago, and in Hannah Arendt's time, we had reached a point where we had lost any kind of coherent authority around which we all actually felt solid. That there was a time where religion becomes replaced with the state and with government. And for some amount of time, this kind of worked, right? But this led us to nationalism and this idea that other kinds of humans are worthy of extermination, right? That we get caught up in these understandings of ourselves and others, and the truths which, the truths which undergird the ideas which inform our societies, from which grow our institutions, which teach us and condition us to recreate that society. And the way that they grow is a way that we are constantly ever more alienated, right? And this has to do with capitalism. I'm deviating from Hannah Arendt's work here. So far as I haven't read all of Between Past and Future. Maybe she gets to this. I don't think so, though. Where the kinds of things that used to work to solidify us, because of the nature of the way that society grows out, those things are antagonistic, and we are antagonistic with each other within those frameworks on purpose. And what this leads is to a fragmentation of meaning, right? Where before we can have any kind of conversation about anything, we have to spend all of the time defining the terms, right? Well, what do you mean by sexual relations? Says Clinton, right? Well, what do you mean by whatever, right? And we find ourselves in an era, and this is decades old. We find ourselves in an era where everything is questionable, and no authority has authority, right? Science doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. This is something that James from the internet was talking about in the very beginning of their stream today, when they were talking about the Kristi Noem and the her being tried by Congress, and in the proceedings, right? People that watch the proceedings, and if you already believe that Kristi Noem is wrong and doesn't know what she's doing and is unqualified and doesn't understand and doesn't have any kind of defensible position, then you saw the proceedings and you were like, yeah, Kristi Noem got owned. But if you were the kind of person who believes those things and believes in what Kristi Noem is trying to do, those people would see that same footage and be like, yeah, Kristi Noem, she owned him. She really owned those libs, right? Like, and That's the reality that we are in, is that people will see, right? People will see state violence and not see it. People will see genocide and not see it. People will see systemic racism and not see it. Because everything is questionable, everything is doubtable, everything is subject to interpretation, and everybody has their own facts and values and ideologies that we fluidly move through, which is one of the things we're going to talk about today. Because the fluidity of our ideologies, possibly, right? Right now, I'm kind of speculating. I should back that sentence up a little bit. That because of the fluidity of our ideologies, there is no truth or authority to which we can appeal to rescue us from ourselves, right? In last stream, I was talking about how society is supposed to be constructed of us networking together with each other to build up society in a way that supports us. That's how societies are supposed to work, but that's not how our society works. The way that our society works is we are at the behest of capitalists constantly exploiting each other in all of our consumption, in all of our labor, in all of our production, in everything that we do. When you go to work and do your job, you are performing exploitation, right? And this is another thing that I think that we should start talking about a little bit more, is the tendency for leftists or communists to blame the ruling class and to blame capitalists, and we absolve the working class of their compliance, right? Of the fact that they are doing the exploitating actually, right? And it's no wonder that they do the exploiting, because they have to, right? So we're not victim blaming, but we have to be real about the fact that the exploitation is being structured by the capitalists and Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and all of the other capitalists. The system is structured, and those people pull the levers of the structure. But the people who do the exploitating are laborers. Right? This means that seizing the means of production is easier than you thought. You just have to get the other people who are exploiting you to recognize that it's easier than we all thought, because we are all doing the exploiting. We are holding the means of production, and we are holding the reins of our exploitation, because we are holding the means of production. But this is necessarily true. The system can't function without us holding on and keeping to doing the doing, right? The system functions because the laborers, Elon Musk doesn't make the system work. Jeff Bezos doesn't make the system work. The people who go up and get up and go to work every day to work for those companies do. The laborers, right? And we have to be real about that relationship. But this is all just an aside for where we're going, because we're trying to figure out this idea of leftist perfectionism. That's the main idea today, is we want to focus on the extent to which we can or should police the actions or ideologies or initiatives or values of other leftists, to go into their spaces to critique them, right? Is that something that we can do? Right, I was in Noisy Immigrants, the Noisy Immigrants chat yesterday. Yes, yesterday. And one of his chatters kept kept telling him what to do, and telling him that his ideas were wrong, and that he should instead be saying this, and that he should think this, and the noisy immigrant was like, this is my space, this is where I live, don't tell me what to do in my own space. And the noisy immigrant is right to say that, to insist, to defend his own boundaries, his own ideology, his own space. He is right for doing that. And the person that he was chiding was wrong for coming into his space to tell him how to be. But also, right, what happens when one of our comrades is platforming ideas that are bad, or fascist specifically, not just bad? What if they are platforming fascists? What if they are engaging in colluding with the enemy? What if they are setting themselves up for Fed posting, right? These are the kinds of things that we should be able to go, hey, wait a minute, and say something about. But, right, how do we go about telling people how to be in their space? Right, so we've got to kind of work some of that stuff out, which is why I should probably go back to the outline. We're going to go back to the outline real fast, which should still be up. That's why it's not. And, right, so this is generally the question. Does the term have use in leftist spaces? The term policing, right? Is it appropriate to police our other leftists, or other people who identify with our movement, right? And that's something else too. What if somebody is calling themselves an anarchist, but their ideas are terrible, and their theory is off base, and they don't understand the texts, and they are pointing people in the wrong direction? Right? What do we do about those people who are giving out bad ideas and misrepresenting the philosophy? Right? What do we do about them? What do we do about Bosch and Mike from PA and other people who call themselves leftists and are in leftist spaces, but who interfere with actual leftism and leftist activism and getting people to do the things, right? What do we do about them? Nothing? Does it make us assholes to do something, or does it make us assholes to do nothing? You know? So that's kind of what where we are today. Let's start with these videos and see where the videos take us.
Now I'm not here. Now I'm not here to draw a straight causal line from Howard Scott to Elon Musk. Though for the record, Musk's grandfather was a card-carrying member of Technocracy Inc. That's just a fun fact. Instead, I want to illustrate what technocracy, the ideology, looks like today, and how it's kind of endemic in technical disciplines. So back before the great efficiencying of our workforce last spring, I was a STEM education researcher, and one of the things I studied was how engineering students think about societal scale ethics. And long story short, they generally default to the exact same mental framework as the 1930s technocrats, with one slight but important update. Long story significantly longer, one dataset I worked with was a series of focus groups where we asked students to brainstorm solutions for a hypothetical scenario in which a small grocery store in a low-income neighborhood at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic is losing employees due to health concerns and losing customers due to excessively long lines. And there are a few takeaways from our analysis of this dataset that I've been dying to share. I mean, we published it in a paper, but you know, share with more than the dozen other researchers in my hyperspecific subfield. So I got one bad news takeaway from this study and one good news takeaway. Bad news first. The bad news takeaway is that almost 100% of the students immediately went into full technocrat mode, and it wasn't great. The first
Okay, I want to remind everybody about the conversation that we were having on last stream about how the education systems that we have, starting at young, as young as kindergarten, but all the way up until postgraduate education, where the way that we teach is centered around certain kinds of ideals and values, and those ideals and values we know are bad, are bad for education. They're bad for conditioning us to problem solve. They're bad in that they often turn people off from wanting to learn more about how to do these things and to fix these problems. They're just bad in a lot of ways. But one of the other ways is that we end up with these factories almost that turn out people who are pieces of garbage, right? And Harvard is unfortunately a pretty good example of this. It is a place where elites go to school. And because it is a school for the elites, and those elites end up being the ruling class, the kind of people that, human traffic and get away with it all of the time, like, with the Epstein stuff and all the stuff that's going on right now, it all traces back to our institutions of learning, right? Where people are conditioned to understand the world or understand problem solving in a certain kind of way. And this kind of way turns out moral monsters. And that's what we're going to be talking about here.
The first thing that stood out to us was that the students' early brainstorming consistently featured bad ideas that dehumanize poor people. By bad ideas, I mean solutions they suggested that were largely unrealistic for the context of a small grocery store in a low-income neighborhood, such as installing self-checkout kiosks like Target or going full cashier-free experience like Amazon Go. And by dehumanizing poor people, I mean setting design constraints based on negative stereotypes about low-income folks, like that they steal, or that they don't know how to use technology, or that their money is literally too dirty to be read by machines. Digging deeper into this pattern of our students' reasoning, we identified 4 unspoken assumptions that tended to occur together. The driving values are efficiency and profit. Human stakeholders are problems to be worked around. The best solution is a high-tech intervention. And the store should be more like a mega corporation. You can go read the paper if you want to see how we identified these assumptions in the students' dialogue, but I'll just say here that this pattern was horrifyingly consistent. Increase the store's efficiency and mitigate problems introduced by the poors by copying some piece of technology used by Amazon or Walmart or Amazon or Target or Amazon. And with the exception of the last bit, that sounds a lot like the technocrats' ideology. In fact, the 4 assumptions we identified in our study map onto the axioms from the last section of this video almost perfectly. Efficiency is the ultimate value, human needs are impediments to efficiency, and technical fixes are the only reliable solution. But where the original technocrats' line of thinking landed on scientists and engineers having the ultimate say, the students deferred authority not to their own technical expertise, but to that of the most successful companies, which I find very interesting. For one, because the absolute dominance of tech empires like Amazon is clearly wreaking havoc on students' ability to imagine anything legitimately innovative, but also because the original technocracy movement was a rejection of capitalism.
Just real quick, I'm going to back this up and remind us all about Mark Fisher's Capitalism Realism.
Amazon is clearly wreaking havoc on students' ability to imagine anything legitimately innovative, but also because the original technocracy movement was a rejection of capitalism. And yet, the near-identical ideology we see in young engineers today seeks to emulate those most successful within capitalism. Efficiency was expanded to include profit, and the most revered technical experts are those who've made the most profit, but the fundamental approach to identifying and solving problems is still there. It's just that now it serves Jeff Bezos instead of Howard Scott. Also, in case anyone's worried that the parallel I'm drawing is just me imposing the thing I researched onto an unrelated historical thing, a paper about the technocracy movement that I only read this year also characterized it with 4 points that also map onto my characterization of student reasoning from 2022. And that's on investigator triangulation. So that's the bad news. The science-first ideology put forward by some engineers 100 years ago is now hegemonic in engineering education, with a slight tweak to make it synergistic with the capitalist system it once sought to challenge. And I'm not saying this just based on my one paper. There's a lot of research in engineering ed with much larger sample sizes and much longer observation times that point in the same direction. Studies show that engineering students' interest in social values decreases over the course of their education, which makes sense considering that studies also show students are taught in ways that strictly separate technical knowledge from softer disciplines that might politicize it, which sucks because even more studies show that students internalize this division, learning to conceptually bracket their personal social values from their developing professional identities, thereby perpetuating the cycle. So for all intents and purposes, American engineering education teaches technocratic ideology. Lovely. So what's the good news? The good news is that even though every group started technocratically, for the most part, they didn't stay there. There was maybe one student in the whole bunch who really just couldn't let go of Amazon as the model, which was so interesting that I wrote a whole other paper about it. But this interesting outlier aside, most of the students eventually incorporated non-technical forms of knowledge into their reasoning. Like an article they read about the over-policing of stores in low-income communities, or the experiences of friends and family who were essential workers in the early days of the pandemic. Sometimes they got there on their own through conversation within the group. Sometimes they got there after the researcher prompted them to, for example, consider the ethics of the solution they were exploring. But one way or another, by the end of the hour, the ways students were reasoning, and subsequently the kinds of solutions they were developing, were radically different from what they were at the start. Once they expanded the boundary of relevant information, they could ground the problem in the realities of people's lives, and the result was often landing on a solution that had a lot more to do with reorganizing the ways people interact, and a lot less about implementing some fancy machine. What this means is that the ideologically technocratic reasoning students defaulted to in the start of the sessions isn't an inherent thing. We often think of ideology as a set of fundamental beliefs people hold, kind of like how I defined it earlier. But from studying ideology in education, I've come to understand it as less fixed than that. An ideology is most easily defined through its axioms, sure, but using those axioms to make sense of the world is something people can step into or out of at different times, in different contexts, and in response to different incentives. It can be learned, and it can become habit, certainly, but it's not innate or inescapable. I emphasize this now because in the next section, we're gonna see how far this kind of reasoning goes, and I don't want you to think that means we're doomed to it. Basically, hold on to that bit of optimism because this next part's a doozy.
It is. It's good. But if you haven't gone to check out this video, please do so. I'm gonna go ahead and link it. This content creator is amazing. Please go support them. So this idea here is at the end where they're talking about ideologies that students slip into and out of is something that I think warrants a lot more philosophical investigation. This is, so far as I'm aware, this is not a deeply philosophically worked out idea, right? I mentioned on the outline that I presented. Keeps disappearing. Because I keep minimizing it. That's what happens, self. Down here, I've got this other phrase. I need to, here we go. Like that. Maybe? Yeah. Right, so, this is not a good term. This is a placeholder term, right? This is I would like to come up with a better term for this, but I'm not sure yet what this idea is. So I'm not sure how to name the idea that I'm not sure what it is. Right? So, but I did mention that Hume has this concept of identity. We talked about this a little bit in last stream, where you are a bundle of impressions. So the metaphysics that I didn't get into last stream is that the metaphysical idea behind Humean ideology is that you have certain kinds of relationships with the world, and those relationships are impressions for you. So Hume will be in the camp. There's in metaphysics, there's a divide. I've mentioned this once or twice on the stream before. In metaphysics, there's a divide, an argument about whether knowledge precedes materiality or whether materiality precedes knowledge. So it would be the case that the stuff in the world informs our ideas about it. And then we make sense of those things being informed by the materiality of the world. Or it is the case that the way that we comprehend the world literally determines its materiality, and we understand that through that direction. In metaphysics, for most of philosophy, well, for about 2,000 years, has been kind of divided on this back and forth. Depends on how you qualify that, I guess. Anyway, the Hume is going to be of the idea that the world has impressions, and the world has properties itself, and the properties of things in themselves inform you of how they are. And this knowledge that is based in the material world determines how you understand, what you understand, and the judgments and values that you use to navigate basic understanding. Right? So, and what we're talking about here is cognitive judgment. So before you make a decision, there are frameworks and mechanisms that your consciousness uses to organize ideas. Before you understand that you have some kind of choice to make, before you understand that such a choice exists, there are frameworks of knowledge which sort and organize your ideas for you and bring them to your attention for you to make decisions about. And Hume is talking about these mechanisms of your understanding being literally defined by the material world. And this is a relationship that is reciprocal. You do things to the world to make the world different. When you do that, right, you have made the world materially different and will be impacted by this. And this is I mentioned this before, this is pre-Marx, pre-materialism, an understanding of, it's actually kind of phenomenology as well. This relationship is going to lead us to phenomenology. In fact, y'all don't get just how amazing Hume is. To say that Hume was ahead of his time is probably one of the greatest understatements. Not that Hume is right about everything. Anyways, I'm getting distracted again. Oh, I should read all this. Good. Find the culture of woke scolding and moral grandstanding within the left to be elitist and counterproductive. Agreed. We should probably talk. I meant to put this on the on here too. Sakar, Ash Sakar. Is that how her name is spelled? Sarkar. Yes, Ash Sarkar. Okay, there's an R in there that right. So that's what you're on about apolitical daddy is something that Ash Sarkar has talked about in their work. So you might want to check them out, and we'll talk about her take later. Probably not today because I don't have any of that stuff prepared already. But that is something that I do want to make sure that we don't overlook. Anyways, thank you. It often feels like people are prioritizing performative woke points scoring over actual progress. Yes. And that is a really great way to phrase it too. Performative woke points scoring over the actual progress changing of systemic racism. This behavior is dangerous because the right, and specifically the alt-right pipeline, offers much more compelling narratives to young men who, like me, are dealing with genuine insecurities, and I completely 100% agree about that too. And that's why optics do matter, right? Going back to the conversation that we were having at the very beginning of Stream Apolitical Daddy, that's why optics do matter. Is because it's not about making the ideas marketable. That's the thing, is that the propaganda of the deed will demonstrate to people that the ideas are good once we can actually do them. The problem is that we can't actually do them to any effect, to any benefit right now. We live in a society where we are unable to organize ourselves freely. If we could organize ourselves freely, we would be showing people that the things work, and we wouldn't have to make it marketable. We don't live in that world. That's a fantasy world, right? So we have to, I guess, consider how we make the ideas marketable. Right. So, and that might be where we are materially. On the left, need to stop demanding immediate ideological purity and instead use a materialist analysis to connect with the average liberal. Right. We should be meeting people where they are and guiding them towards socialist ideas based on their economic realities rather than alienating them with radical jargon right out of the gate. Absolutely. And this is something that I'm really guilty of in a lot of ways. And I'm going to tell a story, actually, that recently I was at a social function, and at this social function, there was lots of lively conversation. And the group of people that I hang out with are generally kind of the same political alignment. I mean, it's a big ballpark, right? It's a wide spectrum, and it's certainly not very cohesive, right? There's not, we don't organize ourselves politically, we organize ourselves geographically. We are close together. We have a community of people who depend on each other so that we can survive. And it just so happens that many of us have similar-ish ideologies, and so we hang out on occasion and do social stuff. But there are differences, and at the social function, somebody I should have been better prepared, but I had been drinking and probably wasn't really thinking about it very much. But they began. So there are conversations going on, but somebody began to take over the conversation, and they began taking over the conversation by talking about how they are a progressive and a liberal, And this should have already set me up. But then they started talking about the police and how it's really not that bad. And their argument was that, it's easy for people on the sidelines. This person kept saying it's easy for people on the sidelines to judge the people who are in it, who are doing it. This is a bullshit argument, by the way. But it's the argument that the liberal, self-espoused, the liberal was using. And I did a very poor job of holding back my visible disgust. I said something under my breath about disbelief, I think. It wasn't specific, and I wasn't really thinking about what I was saying, so I don't remember exactly what it was that I said. It wasn't disparaging about anybody, but it was, something about my inability to believe what I was hearing. And I just got up and left because it's a social engagement. Everybody's having a good time. I didn't want to disrupt the conversation. And I've got so much regret about how I handled the situation, right? This was a great opportunity for me to engage meaningfully with somebody who probably would have taken me seriously if I had taken them seriously, treated them seriously with respect, and engaged in a conversation about trying to get to the bottom of it. But I didn't do that. My pretension took over. And it was kind of an elitist thing where in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, well, I don't even have the time to explain to this liberal who doesn't know anything. It's not my job to handhold a bunch of people, and I really just let the opportunity, a really fantastic opportunity to say really smart, informed, convincing things to refute this terrible argument. But instead, I got in my feels and my ego, right, or my pretension, whatever it was, interfered with my ability to actually do what I think I should have done, which was to engage meaningfully in a conversation, which was going to be hard for some of the people sitting in that group, right? And it would have been incredibly challenging and might have hurt some of their feelings, right? But would have absolutely been worth it. And that's an opportunity that's gone. I can't rewind. I'm not going to get that opportunity set up for me again like a softball throw, because that was a perfect opportunity for me to really begin to radicalize some of these people in a way that I think that some of them would have been willing to shift. But instead, right, I was like, well, this person who just doesn't know. And I don't want to take the time to have to explain and have to handhold, and that's just me being an elitist dick. It was me being up on a pedestal for no good reason, feeling like like educating this person was beneath me, despite the fact that I'm literally a professor. Right. But I have to be honest about it. That's kind of how I felt, that educating this liberal who is so indoctrinated is just beneath me. And that's not true. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's the thing. That's, but it's something that I've thought a lot about, and, that I'm internalizing. I'm not beating myself up about it, but I am carefully, methodically, and regularly revisiting this lesson so that the next time I'm in such an opportunity, I remember what I'm supposed to be doing. I remember that it is literally my responsibility to help people who don't know, as somebody who knows, as an authority on the knowing things. That's what I like. That's the thing. So just remembering to be humble. Good. So, oh yeah, but to circle back, apolitical daddy, I completely agree with everything that you're saying, and that's kind of what that's one side of, at least one side. There might be two, there might be more, but that's one side, right? That there is this problem where it does seem to be like people are more interested in racking up the points, the scoring. How did you phrase it? Performative woke points scoring over actual progress. And that's demonstrated in how people engage with the ideas. Oh my God, I don't want to talk about papers. Hold on. Let me just emotionally move past, because the last few essays that I've been grading, let me just say, it's really hard to be a philosophy instructor who grades an ethics essay on racism written by a white person. Holy fuck. Just taking a second to, you see my face is red, just thinking about, I need to emotionally move on so that I don't spend a whole lot of time being mad about a student's submission. Wow. Yeah, moving on. Yeah, let's get back to the video. Good. Close that out. Oh, it's right. Okay, for context, I should have given us a little bit more context for the last video. I did put the link in chat, right? Yeah, I did. And let me put this link in chat. This is Andrewism. We've talked about them a number of times on stream. They're also a fantastic content creator. I didn't put over on YouTube. Let me put that one first. Right. And right, so one of the things that I have on the outline, let me actually go back to the outline. One of the things that I have on the outline is, right, that has to do with artful gathering. And Andrewism is going to talk about this in context of this video. And within the context of policing or enforcement. That might be another word that we explore. Enforcement. I don't know if enforcement has neutral connotations or both negative and positive. I feel more like it's negative. And that's kind of the thing with policing too. So, and that's before we launch into the video, when last stream I was talking about separating policing, the myth, right, that police are necessary and helpful for maintaining an orderly society. That's the myth of policing. That's not what police do. And so we spent some time talking about what it is that police do versus the myths around what policing is supposed to be. And what I'm trying to figure out here is, even if we reject the horrible, awful, evil thing that policing is that we know it to be today, if we cling to the myth and hold on to the myth of what policing is, do we still, is this still a bad idea? Right? We know that doing what police do is evil and wrong, and we shouldn't do that in our own communities. But if we maintain the idea that policing, right, is something that can be useful for societies, right? That's kind of the broader question that we're asking here. Like how liberals love to point out contradictions, but not to address them, right? Yeah, that is exactly right, Kamatara. But mock them. They only understand dialectics as a spectacle, rather than an analytical tool. Well, and that's one of the things that Jane and I were talking about. I think you were here, actually, when Jane and I were talking about it, too, that sometimes dialectics just gets used as a shield for well, I'm just asserting that my idea is right because dialectics. When a lot of people use dialectics, it almost feels like they don't understand it at all, right? In the first place, let alone are actually materially basing their analysis and in getting the right ideas, right? They're off on all of the wrong feet. Not just starting off on the wrong foot. All of their feet are wrong. I really struggle with what I think policing should be. Well, and that's what we're trying to work through, Apolitical Daddy. And that's making that clear what police do. And this is something that we've talked about before, but it's absolutely worth reiterating. What police do is they perform two functions in society. They protect capital and they insulate those in charge from accountability. Those are the things that police do. That's why they exist. That's why capitalism keeps them around, is because what police do is they protect capital and they insulate those in power from accountability. That's it. That's what they do. Now, if some police officers help cats out of trees, or help old ladies cross the road, or tell you when your taillight is out rather than giving you a ticket, right? None of that is good. None of that's good for the community because their mere existence is evil in itself. And this is something that we've talked about too. Right? That we have an institution of policing prevents people like you from being responsible problem solvers in your own community. In fact, it's illegal for you to appeal to self-help. If somebody steals your stuff, you can't go get it back. It's illegal for you to steal back your things if they've been stolen. This, quite literally. You can't get a band of people together. You can't raid their house. You can't confront them at gunpoint. None of that is legally permissible. You must appeal to the state. And this existence, the existence of an institution whose job it is to be the arbiters for our rights, right, interferes with our ability to freely be free people who determine their own world. We don't have the freedom to make the world as we would like it because the police will brutalize us for making the world like we would like it. It's directly antithetical. If we could build the world the way we would like it to be, it would be free. And the capitalists can't have that. The state can't have that. The state requires for itself to be indispensable in all of your affairs. Everything that you do to live requires the state. And they have to have it that way. If you could have freedom, then you would take it. So they can't allow you any amount of freedom. In any regard, in any avenue, in any aspect of your life, you have zero freedom. And this is true for all civilizations right now that have police. If you have a state and that state has police, you have no freedom. Categorically, that is a necessarily true statement. You don't have access to freedom because there is a class of citizens to whom you must appeal. Right? And this goes back to the policing is unconstitutional. On the face of it, it's illegal for me to defend my life against the police. They can consider me a threat and execute me with near impunity. I do not have the right to defend my own life against the police. Therefore, the institution of policing is necessarily, categorically, incontrovertibly unconstitutional. It interferes with all of my rights and freedoms. That there is a class of police who can brutalize me and kill me with impunity, and I don't have the right to defend myself against that class, means I don't have rights. We all live in a fucking apartheid state, y'all. Right? Quite literally. But we have been conditioned to accept that policing is natural, and that policing is necessary, and that it is good, despite the fact that it is literally none of those things. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans existed in societies of cooperation where they managed themselves and took care of social things. You sound like a liberal to me because I don't know any better. A little bit of back and forth. But yeah, but they're not necessary, they're not natural, and they're not good, right? Because what they do, what the institution of policing does, right? And even if we don't count the functions, and right, if we exclude all of the other things, just that, the institution itself interferes with our ability to be the determiners of our own communities. That in itself makes the institution of policing unjust. Just that, right? Without all of the documented crime committed by police, right? The fact that all of the domestic abuse, all of the unreported crimes, all of the times that people have been victimized by sexual assault, and then when they go to the police, the victim is assaulted again by the police over and over, time and again, countless accounts of this happening. It's not good. The institution of policing is not good. But okay. I got a little bit. I'm gonna say I got a little bit off topic, but I didn't. I just did the whole topic again. I just went the full circle again. It was supposed to be a real quick thing before I started that video, and it ended up not being a real quick. But anyways, back to Andrewism. We're trying to figure out how to organize ourselves in ways that don't require quote-unquote policing.
But by practicing basic security culture and resisting the bureaucratic forces that may co-opt our community engagement, we can similarly limit our legibility in the eyes of the system. That might involve limiting our communication on mainstream social media and organizing mutual aid in ways that don't rely on the non-profit complex. We can take similar lessons from the history of maroonage. As brilliantly identified by geographer and abolitionist Celeste Winston, Black communities resistant to oppression have historically sought collective freedom through the creation of maroon geographies.
Sorry, I went back further than I thought. We're getting there.
What she calls the places of refuge beyond the status quo of slavery or modern policing. For those unfamiliar with the term, maroonage refers to the act of escaping enslavement, or more expansively, authority as a whole, and establishing autonomous oppositional communities. The continuous pursuit of freedom found in the practice of maroonage has long been a source of personal and strategic inspiration for me as a Trinidadian anarchist. In How to Lose the Hounds, Winston draws from that same well of history to define maroonage as a way of being and building community that is invaluable even today, as we co-create and lean upon our own spaces, narratives, economies, and conflict resolution practices beyond and against the system's violent logic. That may mean building social centers, retelling oral histories, reviving the Susu for survival, and mediating conflicts without police intervention. Taking both the example of Zomia and the practice of maroonage into account, you should have a sense of what I mean by building a radical community and not villages as usual. Our community building must be adaptable to ever-changing circumstances. It must be resistant to legibility and incorporation into the system. It needs to be a place of refuge, physically and psychologically, for those facing oppression. It must be consciously outside of and opposed to the system and everything it entails. I'm not talking about simply launching yet another intentional community. That's a nice lifestyle choice for some, but in practice, it can fall short of its noble intentions. I'm talking about creating radical networks in the spaces we're already in and pushing them off the grid, away from their dependency on the system. So not severing ties with the rest of the world, but instead reshaping those ties on new terms. Alright, so these vague platitudes sound nice and all, but what do you actually do to get started? Well, building community requires bringing people together. But if you've ever interacted with people before, you'd know that gatherings do always work out for the best. So maybe we should better understand what it takes to gather effectively first. Thankfully, Priya Parker's The Art of Gathering has just what we need to get started. It's not a radical text by any means, but it does provide some solid advice for gatherings of all sorts. By becoming what she calls an artful gatherer, someone who can create meaning and connection in groups where everyone's different, we can bring people together to transform the way we live. So, what will help us create connection in our gatherings? First, it's necessary to define a clear purpose. We need to gather with intention, not simply default to the category of event we're hosting. As a community draws closer together, more casual and aimless encounters will weave their way into everyday life. But when you're just getting started, when the village is lacking, you need a solid foundation to build upon. Bringing your neighbors together for the first time might involve having a barbecue, hosting a potluck, or organizing a sports day. A radical community might get its start at a protest or an info shop. In any case, you need a purpose that is sharp, specific, and bold. Perhaps it's to forge alliances between the elders and the youth in our community, or to prepare for the next hurricane before it happens, or to steal.
Yeah, I think that's gotten enough of it. The general idea is that we need to figure out how to be artful gatherers, to create the kind of spaces where we can breed helpful disagreement, right? That we can there's a difference, and I'd started talking about this on Wednesday's stream, and I'm not sure if I finished talking about it or got distracted. But there's a difference between one feeling like they have the freedom to engage, and one feeling compelled to engage, right? So when it comes to my interaction with my college, well, with one of the colleges, I don't really have much interaction at all. But I mentioned with the one college, there's a lot of interaction. I know my peers quite well. I've interacted with a number of them in a number of different ways for a number of different ends. So I understand them as a community of people, and I have the freedom to engage with the faculty senate and to engage with the direction and choosing the direction of the body. I have the freedom to engage with the system as much as I would like to and have as much democratic control within that system as I would like to. But I wouldn't like to. There's not really any point, because those people seem to be doing well enough, and I'm really busy with my job, and for me to do any of that stuff, it would require me to learn a whole bunch of ideas, learn about how to navigate that system, learn how to work with those people, and I'm not incentivized to do any of that. And so that's a completely different kind of freedom. I have the freedom, but I don't have the inclination. And that is in part because of the way that the system is. It's a bit esoteric. It is hierarchical. It is, in a lot of ways, a kind of structure that has more rigidity than it has power, right? There are more cons to working with and within the system than there are to just ignoring the system, right? Then there are pros of engaging with the system. And that's, that's the fault of institutions. It is a money-making institution that does its best to give its members some kind of democratic control over their workplace, for which I will applaud them. It's a fantastic university to work for. I feel really very valued as a member of the faculty and staff. And again, I appreciate that there are a number of mechanisms, right, by which I can engage with the faculty, engage with picking the direction of the faculty, or take democratic control with it if I would like to. But I wouldn't like to. And that's not the kind of systems that this kind of system that we need to incorporate. We want to build the kinds of spaces in which people don't just feel free to engage. They feel compelled to engage, right? Where there is more benefit. The pros for working within the system far outweigh the cons of navigating that system, right? And one of the simple things that, for example, my college could do is during the training and onboarding system, have a whole dedicated section to where I hang out with people from the faculty senate. And I watch as they engage with the problem-solving process, and they take ideas from the faculty and staff, and then they turn those into proposals, and then they turn those into what are they called? Something of action. Something of action that will be reviewed by committees of people who will then decide whether or not we implement these kinds of things, right? If it was mandatory, right? If it was a mandatory part of my job to engage with these kinds of ideas. It would probably be better, actually. It's so funny because I would resent it, right? I would resent all of the extra stuff. Like, I've got enough things on my plate. Why do I have to worry about all of this extra stuff? But at the end of the day, the end result, I believe more employees would feel more rewarded and more fulfilled with their engagement in their workplace if it was required for them to give a shit about the organizing, the structure, and the planning of the workplace. When you're trying to teach people about leftism but don't have the time because you have to pay the rent for your capitalist landlord. I mean, that's literally the case. Yes, absolutely. That's the reality, 100%. And it's in it by design. That's something that I mentioned also in last stream and didn't get to really unpack as much as I'd like to. Something that I have to come face to face with in the classroom every day. I have a job. That job is to train students for the workplace. But that is kind of antithetical for philosophy, for learning how to be a critical thinker who asks questions and rocks the boat and it isn't satisfied with the status quo answers, right? That's antithetical to training people on how to be good employees. Because good employees accept the status quo. They do what they're told. They don't ask questions about it. They just do it, right? And so that's a conflict that I have to run into all of the time. And it is difficult to maintain the balance, right? It is tough sometimes to figure out. Good soldiers follow orders, right? And good, so do good employees, right? And that's this semester actually. As a quick aside, this semester I changed up my end of the semester speech for the first time. Since the very first semester that I have taught, the end, when I get to the end of the semester and I'm giving my final lecture to my students, I end it, or have always previously ended it, with giving them some advice. And my advice to them at the end of my course is to forget everything that I've taught you. Because the things that you have learned in this course, if you apply them to your life, you will be a critical thinker, and you will rock the boat, and you will draw the ire of the status quo, and you will be punished for that. The easier thing to do, which you should do, this is the recommendation that you should take, this is what I would tell my students, is that you should forget everything you've learned in this class. You should keep your head down and you should keep your mouth shut. You should do your job and you will live a happy life. If you apply these lessons to your life, you will probably live a much more fulfilled life, but it won't be happy and it won't be fun. And this is the way that I have for semesters. Since for all of the years that I've been teaching, this is the end note, right? And this semester I changed it up. I explained to my students that is the way that I had always ended my course in the past. But this semester I can't afford to do that. That my students this semester, right now, I told them, you need to do something. I'm tired I said I can no longer afford. I can no longer afford. We don't have the luxury of any of you putting your head in the sand. We are past that point. We no longer have the privilege of putting our heads down and keeping our mouths shut and not asking any questions. We don't have that privilege. It requires you to do something about your world. And there was more to it than that, but not really much more. That was generally the message. And that's, I mean, I hope. But see, but that's the thing. For the vast majority of my students, they don't have time to give a shit. Because as soon as they are done with my class, they've got 2 weeks off, and then they are in classes again. And they spend 16 to 20 hours reading and doing homework and doing their labs so that they can pass their next classes while they're working their job and trying to raise their kids and trying to figure out how they're going to fix their car that's broken down, right? They have lives that are falling apart because they live in a capitalist hellscape, right? They don't have time to really give a shit beyond doing 4 or 5 hours of research on a topic and then in an hour and a half hammering out an essay that they're going to turn in on, systemic racism written from a white perspective. You just shouldn't, right? If you're white, just shut the fuck up. Oh God. Oh, and I know it's not fair. It's not fair. I don't know how old this student is. But their takes were bad. And it's not just the one that I have got one student that was exceptionally bad, and they're trying, it's very lib shit where they're trying to be not racist, and they're trying to be not racist really just makes them sound more racist. Right, because they're trying to be really careful about their language and about how they phrase stuff, so it just comes out really awkward and not making a lot of sense. And it's just, oh man. And this semester was I had probably, trying to think about it now, I think I only had 4 students who wrote about systemic racism, and 2 of them are of color. So, and that's whatever they have to say about systemic racism is correct, right? Whatever they have to say about systemic racism, I'm learning from them. I don't have any critiques. But the other 2 people, one of them just did a bad job. And the other student, it's well, okay, so it's this Kaimatara, if you're still here, this probably happens with you. This might be something that you're familiar with. Right? And I think that we've talked about this before, where rather than your cultural identity being seen, you become a representative for a trope or tropes, like stereotypes or right, in it's anyways, if you are a white student, just don't write essays on systemic racism unless you're specifically required to. And then, right, because that if that's the case, it'll probably be for a sociology class. I can't imagine any other class that would do that. And your sociology professor will guide you through how to not say overtly racist things. Right? In your essay, the most well-meaning liberals or leftists, we are treated as tropes. Right. Rather than being a person. And this is actually kind of good, right? When we were talking last on Wednesday, there's when we're talking about identity and ideology, right? I said that I believe that before we have an identity of our own, we find ourselves within ideology. And the ideology informs identity, right, within the context. And that's the thing. You just don't get seen as an identity within the context of an ideology. You just get seen as a mask for the ideology, or right, or a specter. Actually, in some ways, there might be some relationship there with that idea. No, because I'm more thinking of the assimilated idea, right? That rather than it being an idea about your cultural identity informed by anything substantive, it's the extracted capitalist imperial extracted truths that are then retooled into the monotrope. Is that a word? Is monotrope a word? If not, then I think that it needs to be a word. On my old account, my white allies don't exist article goes into detail. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. That is a good point of reference too. For those of you who haven't read that go check it out. The white allies don't exist one is really good. That'll be one that we should probably go back and revisit again later. Not sure if I think it should be a word. All right, well, all right. I'm just throwing it out there. Well, I think that monotropism is. It might already be a word. Monotropic. Huh, that's interesting. I forgot all about this. Is something that Jane has brought up before. It is a word. Monotropism is already a word. It's a cognitive style common in autistic individuals, characterized by a deep, intense focus on one or a few interests at a time. So, so yeah. So it's already a word. I can't. Not going to use that one. That's funny. Cool. I think this is a good spot to leave it. I've been streaming for about 2 hours. I got out the general ideas that I would like to get out. And this is kind of what, and I should have been more upfront about this too in the onset. This was an attempt for me to get more of the ideas out and to flesh more of them out in real detail for myself. Because when it comes to this outline, I slapped the outline together, and like I said, when a week ago when I was streaming last, I said I would probably just spend 15 minutes slapping something together real fast. Yes, that's what this initial outline is. So this part is added to it. I'm gonna reword that. That's completely not the way that I want to word that, but I think I got the idea out. And then this is something that I came up with after the fact that's going to be added on to it at some point, right? How these things are going to relate, I haven't figured out. But I'm certain that these things are going to be related, which is why I keep bringing them up together. So this is the first time that I've really had an opportunity to sit, look at these ideas, and to mull some of them over, to talk them out loud. Was probably pretty helpful. I think that the next time that we stream, I will also be coming back to the outline to go through some of it more thoroughly, rather than me just talking around the ideas. I'll probably try to go point by point and address certain things and then make notes. But I'll probably also already pull up a separate document where I'm reorganizing my thoughts here and trying to connect more themes to this, because there's a lot. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot to unpack, and a lot to understand. Still, a lot of questions. So let's wrap it up. Let's cap it there. Before we go anywhere, let me do a real quick shout out for Street Cat Love, who is awesome. And I should be lurking in your chat a lot more within the next week, Street Cat Love. 2 weeks ago, right? Last week is kind of an exception. This last week is kind of an exception, but weeks before that, I haven't even logged into Twitch most days. I can't even. I had so much to do. Now I'm breathing, right? I've got some breathing room. I have lots to do that are still over my head, but I have a lot less time sensitive stuff. My semester is winding down. I'm able to actually hang out on some streams and to do stuff. So absolutely. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Apolitical Daddy. Thank you, Kaya Matara. Thank you, Jane, for stopping by and saying hi to us. This has been a good one. We've done some good unpacking, I think. Gotten into this stuff. Just getting thoughtful. That's really what I'm trying to maintain is thoughtfulness about this stuff. There's got to be a better way to do that. I keep meaning to. There's lots of stream things that I keep meaning to spend some time doing, and then I never have any time to do them. But I will soon. We're getting there. Huh. Why are they still on? That's really weird. Hey, everybody, let's right into James from the Internet, who is still covering news. This is kind of late in the day. Well, it's kind of early for me to leave stream, so I guess maybe that's part of it. But yeah, let's go, Hey, everyone, if you're not following James from the Internet, go follow James from the Internet. Let's go rate him. Kakite Ano. Kakite Ano. You've said that one to me before, but I don't remember what that is, so I'm going to go look that up. But I've got to keep mindful, because last time I ran out of time. Okay, see you later, yeah. Kakite Ano. I like that, good. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for all of your thoughtful contributions. Thank you for helping me. Right. Thank you for helping me get through this stuff and helping me try to figure this stuff out. Being amazing springboards for ideas and information. You're all fantastic. I appreciate you. Let's get out of here. Until the next time I see you all,